I'm Steve Hemping. Welcome back to BBC's World Have Your Say. Hello from all of us at WGCU in Southwest Florida.
We're discussing the Occupy Wall Street protests and if they are making the right points in the right way.
If you're online, get involved at facebook.com/worldhaveyoursay. We can see your comments on the big screen here.
If you're tweeting, as some of us here are, please use the WISE hashtag.
And don't forget, for the first time, World Have Your Say is being filmed and streamed on the web. You can watch now at WGCU.org.
Text us on country code 44 77 86 20 60 80.
Email What Have You Say at bbc.co.uk.
Hi, I'm Debbie Padnook, and I'd like to go back to Pat and talk about China.
For the last 50 to 100 years, America could arguably be seen as driving innovation. It's because our laws, our regulations, our tax incentives, our investment policies have brought the best and the brightest to these shores to create technology and build the next generation of jobs. We are now seeing countries like China challenge us there to recruit the best and the brightest to their shores to build the technology and to then turn around and get the benefit of the first generation of manufacturing of jobs.
But we can't demonize the Chinese. Our corporations are the ones that are doing their manufacturing in China, selling the stuff to us, keeping the money offshore, not repatriating it, and not being taxed on it.
I would never demonize the Chinese for that. They're doing what they should be doing. But what's happening is you're seeing the massive globalization of technology, of jobs, of investment, and we haven't seen that. We didn't see it 50 years ago. We didn't even see it 20 years ago.
And that's our corporations.
Hi, I'm Jean from Southwest Florida here. And I also want to say, though, that one of the things we haven't talked about is that people seem to feel like if we live in the United States, we don't have issues like hunger and homelessness. No matter where you are in the world, hunger, homelessness, mental illness, we need people to address those things no matter where they are in the world.
Absolutely you do. And again, this isn't to demonize China. Look, every country has become what a company was before. We are out there trying to change our rules and our regulations to force people to come to our shores, to invest, to create jobs, to build manufacturing, to do whatever we can do. Look, Apple, great company, 300,000 people employed in China to manufacture things. They aren't doing it here. They're doing it in China. Why? Because the incentives are there for them to do it.
Well, I'd like to just say that what we've done is taken our eyes off the prize, and we've talked a lot about focus, and the focus should be on the United States of America, not the divided States of America, and we need to quit spending our energy turning against each other. We've become our own worst enemy, and until we get more cooperation and teamwork in our leadership, we can't be globally competitive.
Hi, Michelle from Florida writes on Facebook, she believes that the protests worldwide are due to the speculators driving up costs of oil and commodities to artificial high levels. This is market manipulation, and it's widespread, and she believes that we should be those people should be responsible, held accountable. I agree.
If you're online, you can watch today's show at WGCU.org.
Or post your comments on Facebook at World Have Your Say.
Sanusi from Virginia posted on Facebook, no doubt that Occupy Wall Street protest is an offspring of the Arab Spring. Americans are inspired by the successful uprisings in the Arab and are following a similar trend to draw the attention of Washington to the problems of the economy, high taxes, corporate greed, and high rates of joblessness in the country. And I totally agree. We are inspired by our brothers and sisters overseas.
Well, let's talk about the people overseas, about who you're talking there, and bring in Sarah, who's with the World Have Your Say team in London. She's been looking across Arabic comment being posted on various websites, not just bbcarabic.com. Sarah, what have you seen? Not very much, judging by what we can hear from her at the moment. In the meantime, Judy...
I was back to Pat, and when he was talking about China, the only thing that, in the larger context, China does have an interest in innovation, but it also has an interest in the status quo. They hold about 40% of U.S. national debt, and therefore they want the U.S. to be on a status quo going along because it means a lot in their own economy and their own national debt.
By the way, as you're listening, if you'd like to see photos and videos of where we are, you can go and see them at facebook.com/worldhaveyoursay. You're welcome to tweet us using the WISE hashtag, and you can watch us live at wgcu.org. Just go there on the front page. You'll be able to see the live stream. Hi, Patricia. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm from Fort Myers. Anyway, nobody has mentioned the Tea Party. I was kind of struck by this seems to be kind of a counterbalance to the Tea Party, and I heard something on the radio this morning about Tea Party members trying to show up at planned rallies. I don't know if it was in Florida specifically, to try and break apart the attempt to get the, Occupy Wall Street people.
Let's try and speak to Bassem again in Cairo, who we can see up on the big screen here. Bassem, hopefully this will work this time. Give us your perspective on these protests in America.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you. I'm really happy to be with you here. And hi, Ross, it's the third time that I meet you. About the protests in Egypt, we want to transform our experience in that to you and let you know how things are working here. Because I think there's a huge difference between America and Egypt, between the protests here and there. The protests in Egypt is just by raising voice, and it's just saying that we want, and everyone has his own target. But I really tell you that you need to unify your targets in order to get them. You need to unify your goals, whether that by money, whether that by political insurance, and to be happy and satisfied about your situation right there.
Who wants to respond to that? Who thinks that actually these protesters should calm down and actually you should be grateful for what you've got? Pat's put his hand up again.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I agree with exactly what you're saying, but there's a big difference between what's happening in the Arab Spring and what's happening here in the United States. There's a British author, Ken Follett, who wrote a book who recently compared what happened in the pre-days before World War I. If you look what happened in World War I, we went from 6 or 7 major kingdoms in the world to one left, the British Kingdom. The same basic thing is happening right now within the Arab Spring. You're seeing people suppressed by kings, and they're fighting back.
But Pat, you're giving me a very, very broad answer to what's quite a specific question. I just wonder how many of you reflect that, sure, there are issues here, but Americans need to get a little perspective on what they're experiencing.
Hi, I'm John from Naples. I'm originally from England. I think the American protests may actually be a continuation of what's happened recently in Europe. We've had riots in London, and we've also had protests in Greece against the austerity measures. So I think it's a response to Europe rather than to the Arab Spring.
Hello to my friend in Egypt. I wanted to agree with you that we have to sharpen our focus. Your focus was to bring down your government and change your laws. And that should be our focus, too. I quite agree.
I think you may have heard the first part of your comment, maybe not the last part, but we appreciate Bassem joining us from Cairo.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Bassem. Nice to speak to you.
Personally, I think the protesters do need to calm down a bit. I mean, consider when we were separating from England in whenever that was, it was a while ago. The situations were way worse there. And there's far worse situations around the world than where we are right now.
There's a movie, and you're probably too young to remember it, called Network. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. So, no, I don't think the protesters, respectfully, need to calm down. In fact, I would like to be with them. And you know what? I'd like to see how they feel about it when they're compared to Tea Partiers. There's a radio host who called them Vernon. Thank you.
You had it right first time, Victoria. But Haley, what about this advice you're getting from Victoria?
I respect your opinion, but I think that with people dying in the streets in other countries and starving and women are being raped, I think that our situations are not that bad.
I want to agree with the point of the connection to the European, because this is a large austerity movement that has been brought about by the greed of banks. And it's more connected to that than I think maybe the Arab Spring, which was more trying to get rid of dictators.
Now, Haley and Victoria. Victoria seems like she's almost jumped out of her seat. She's so moved. Haley and Victoria, both stand up because you're giving us two different perspectives on these protests. I wonder which ones of you here would like to speak to Haley or to Victoria?
I would like to speak to Victoria and say that for the first time since 2008, I feel hopeful. And I feel hopeful because the people who are doing the occupation are largely under 30. And I think that is wonderful that they are out there looking out for their interests, because this world, the direction this world takes or this country takes, will be for them. And I didn't think that they had it in them, but oh gosh, I am thrilled.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, but in the 60s, my generation was looking out for the world, and eventually it became their interests, which kind of got us where we are today. So I'm hoping that this new generation takes an infusion of community and balance. And to your point, Haley, there are people being raped and killed here. No offense. Then that happens daily when people can't eat, they can't pay their bills.
Who is slightly disheartened by what Haley had to say? Who would like to speak to Haley?
I would, because, you know, if she believes this is a perfect country, she hasn't lived here very long. It may be considered the greatest world on the face of the earth, but we have our own problems, and we need to work through them. And we do have people starving every day, right here in our own community. You may not realize it, but I have kids in school who go to class with the kids who have one meal a day, and that's at school.
No, I agree with that, and I see what you're saying with how there are people suffering in our country. What my point was is that it's just not as bad as it is in many other countries around the world.
Well, I've done missionary work in other countries, and I agree the U.S. has problems with money, and we need to change that. But I've seen countries where poverty is so much worse, and we have so many luxuries that we take advantage of. Like, I agree we need to make change, but I feel there's some sacrifices that still aren't necessary. Like, you don't need to have TV, you don't need to have internet. It's not a necessity for life. I've been to St. Lucia, they don't have any of that. The people on their streets are...
With respect, I think there might be a few people listening in St. Lucia right now who are thinking, hold on, there's a big flat screen in the corner, and I listen to...
I've been to the poor...
What have you say?
I understand that, but I've been to the poor parts of the country where the kids are just happy just by your presence of being there. It's what makes them happy, and that simple thing makes them happy, but people here need more than that.
On today's World Have Your Say, we're discussing the Occupy Wall Street protests and if America needs a protest movement for change.
I completely disagree with Haley. I think Karl Marx wrote, an unbridled capitalism will destroy itself, and I think we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg here. If something is not done right now, this country will destroy itself.
Dana from Fort Myers, I wanted to say to Haley, dissatisfaction with the government does not need to be relative. Protesting is not only a right, it's a civic responsibility. And I was in Madison, Wisconsin for the protests earlier this spring, and it was just inspiring to see the people take to the streets and take to the Capitol and really stand up for themselves. The government in power at the time didn't do what they were elected to do, and then the people stood up for themselves, and it was very inspiring to see that kind of change.
I'm not saying that it's not inspiring. It is very inspiring to see people make their own opinions made. That's the whole point of the show. But I'm just saying that we have so many things in our country that we take for granted, and we don't consider what other countries don't have.
Well, and even if the change doesn't occur immediately, the idea is that it sparks a discussion, and it's important to discuss everything that we're talking about today. And that kind of attention that they're getting in New York right now leads to discussions like this and going as far away as Egypt, joining in.
It's true, but you can make your voices heard without having to have a protest.
I think, that's really hard for people that really feel they don't have a voice and they don't have million-dollar bank accounts.
Well, neither do I.
But you have a voice right now.
You're saying that we should calm down because we don't have it as bad as everyone else. But just because we don't have the worst problems doesn't mean that we should stop trying to fix our own problems.
I'd like to continue on what James just said. Yes, it's important that we do help out the rest of the world. However, if we do not help ourselves, we will not be in a position that we can help anyone else.
The actor Alec Baldwin in New York tweeted, "I'm thrilled to see the Occupy Wall Street activity because the protest is healthy. 2 misguided wars and most of us napped. This type of activism is good."
Hemen from Pennsylvania posted on Facebook, America's problems can be traced to living off of tomorrow's earnings, and greedy bankers and greedier retailers encouraged Americans to live beyond their means.
Hi, my name is Amy, and I'm from Lehigh Acres. And this protest isn't necessarily about, I believe, being thankful for what we have. I mean, we all live here in the United States, and I'm sure that we would all agree it's a wonderful country, even though it has its problems. However, every time we go through change, there is a revolution. During the American Revolution, we were fighting the oppression of the English. During the women's rights movements, we were fighting for our rights, even though at that point, yes, it was a great country. In the 60s, the African Americans were fighting for our rights in this country, and the next revolution will be the poor man's revolution, and that is what we're seeing right now.
Amy, I know that you want it to be what we're going to see, but realistically, is it what we're going to see from Americans? We're talking about a few thousand in New York, fewer in Boston and Chicago, a handful of people in other places in the country. It's hardly a revolution.
Yes, right now, yes, that is true. But every revolution starts with just what we're talking about today, which is the spark. I believe over the last several years, yes, definitely in this country, we have been complacent, but now we've had enough. We won't take it anymore, and we're here to tell people, one person at a time, one changer at a time, that enough is enough.
Dude. I don't mean to be cynical or skeptical, but I know that there are going to be people all around the world kind of saying at their radio, is this really as big a deal as Amy is suggesting? Do all of you here really feel this is a major spark, a major moment in your country's history to...
No, I lived through the 60s, and I saw how it was co-opted by disco. And I can tell you that in this country, this movement, like all other movies, will be commercialized and co-opted and made into a profit center. That's how it works.
Those of you who have got your hands up and have microphones, just sit down for a moment. I will come back to you, but let's bring in a couple of people on the phone. We can speak to Reem, who's in Bahrain, a country where there have been protests, but where there hasn't been a change of government or a change of regime. Reem, give us your perspective on the American protests from your country.
Well, what's happening first of all, I would like to say hello to everybody, and I'm really happy to be part of this program. But first of all, we are really following what's going on in the States, and I think I'm not very much surprised this happening in the States, since we are living in an era which is calling actually for change. President Obama himself, when he came into power, I mean, he called for change, and many nations around the world were very much motivated and inspired about, you know, having change within their systems, whether the political system or the economic system. And I believe what's happening inside the States is something that's part of the people to exercise their right to say what they like and what they don't like. If we compare the thing that's happening in the Arab world, that people, they don't have this exercise or this right to say whether there's something that they would like to have it in their country. And instead of that, you will have in return, as a response, by having extensive attack and extensive violence against any peaceful protests happening around any demand that the people will call for. As an example, that's what happened in my country, Bahrain, as many people demanding for a basic right to exercise for a certain demands when it comes for the high employment and when it comes to corruption.
So, Reem, let me jump in there because you're making a number of points. Let me just jump in here. But I'm curious about your perception that Americans are going outside of the political system to get change. This is, after all, a country whose leader stood for election based primarily, or at least initially, on that one word change. Amy, does that mean that if you supported him, President Obama is no longer the man to go to get what you want?
No, I supported him then, and I absolutely support him now. He is only one man, and compromise takes two sides. And so when you have the other side saying, we absolutely won't budge with the Tea Party behind them, so I'm not saying that. I think he definitely is the man, and that's who I will be supporting next time. I don't think this is going outside of the political system. I think this is showing the politicians that are there now, they don't believe they are accountable to us. And we're saying, yes, you are.
And here's a fascinating point from Marcus, who's on the front row. He's just handed me a comment saying, the world rooted for the Arab Spring. The world now needs to root for us. And I just wonder, those of you listening outside the States, are you willing these protests on? Are you indifferent to them? Or do you think America should stick with what it's got because it's made this country so wealthy and so powerful? If you've got access to email or Twitter, let us know in the next 10 minutes whether you're rooting for these protests or not.
I'd like to, I'm Bill from Bonita Springs. I'd like to piggyback on what Bob said earlier. The influence of cash on our political system. Point two, I wonder what percentage of those people on the streets in New York or wherever else in the United States are voting. Because those folks outside of the United States rose up and overthrew governments because they didn't have the right to vote. And our percentage of voting is absolutely abysmal.
And Pat and Amy, in your different ways, you've made strong cases for these protests, but do you think it's acceptable to opt out of the political system? Bill is pointing out the low turnouts in the States compared with, say, countries like France and Germany. Is that something that's justifiable?
I think that people need to believe that they have a voice and that their voice is going to count. And I think that these demonstrations provide evidence that people do care, they want to be involved, and that they are going to be involved. And I think they are going to take it to the box office, to the polls, and we'll see it.
Absolutely, I agree. I believe people, number one, have been complacent, or number two, just believe that their voice does not count. But we have to have enough faith in the system to work through it to get the change that we desire.
Lots of hands still going up here in Southwest Florida at the studios of WGCU. If you want to see where we are, do go to facebook.com/worldhaveyoursay. You'll find lots of comments, pictures, and videos as well. Let's take the conversation to Saudi Arabia. Camelia is live with us from Jeddah. She's also up on the big screen here in Fort Myers. Camelia, what's your view of the protests in America?
It's very exciting, and it's refreshing really to see this going on. Not so much because I feel it inspired by what's going on in the Middle East, so-called Arab Spring, but it's more of I like the awakening of the global culture and the interconnection.
So I'm going to jump in here because the line's not good, but I can hear you use the word awakening. Now, if that were true, and I'm not saying it is, if some of you here are having an awakening, just exactly what are you waking up to? What are you realizing now that perhaps you haven't got in touch with before? I'm curious. So those of you who feel that's an appropriate word, what exactly are you waking up to?
Well, I know personally, we were talking about in 2008, the feeling that we felt when Barack Obama came, and we all came together, and those of us who supported him so fervently. I'm feeling that in 2008, I had a job, I had a home, and in 2011, I have neither of those things. There's a big difference.
Todd, are you having an awakening?
No, I'm not having an awakening at all. I mean, I think that this is part of the way the American political system works, because this idea of talking and revolution is all fine to talk about. I think it's far too early to call it a seminal historical moment. I mean, you had the same problems that we've all talked about in the 80s and in the 90s, but because the political system worked by way of debate and negotiation, as I believe Steve was saying earlier, the problems didn't come out and you didn't have this perception of a weak political system that you have now.
Let me quickly go around some more of you. Do you think this is an awakening? Is that overplaying it, Stan?
Yes, I'm Stan from Sarasota. I happen to be an economist, and I'm glad someone finally used the word cash. The movie going to my head is Godzilla versus Bambi. You've got corporate floodgates have been opened by a recent Supreme Court decision, and you've got a required reading in the New Yorker, latest edition New Yorker. The state of North Carolina was bought. It was bought, sold, and it's by money.
But Stan, you're getting into specifics. I want to talk about this word awakening. Is that overplaying it? I want to understand if... I think a lot of people are dubious about whether it warrants that description.
I think people have known that we've had these problems for the last 4 years or so, but the awakening is just the disillusionment with the political process. Is now these populist movements are a way to influence the political parties in a way for those of us who don't have millions of dollars to contribute to campaigns.
Harrison from Texas posts on Facebook, "It looks indeed like it is the American spring from the way it is growing. Multiple cities will stage their versions of Occupy Wall Street, thus transforming this into a global spring."
A global spring, an American spring. How would you guys describe it? I'm curious. Hi there, nice to meet you. I can't quite see your name.
Hi, I'm Shingi.
Very nice to meet you. What would you call it?
It is a type of awakening, but it's kind of awakening to not having the American dream. So I think that's why they're in Wall Street and not at the White House. They've occupied the Wall Street because they're looking for money so that they can fund their American dream that's apparently slipping away.
And in the last couple of minutes, just briefly tell me how you'd describe this. And Camelia and Jed, I'll say thank you very much to you. You've started an interesting last couple of minutes of the show.
I think it has the very much potential for it to be an awakening, but what it matters is what are you going to do about it? What are we who are talking about this issue? What lifestyle changes? What consumer changes? What are we in our communities going to do about this?
What would you call it, Laura?
Well, I think that maybe it is a bit of awakening, but I think it's prompted because of the absolute growth and the disparity of the wealth in this country has reached a critical mass. And I think it's at a point where the folks that are, so to speak, in the bottom 99%, the way the language is going, are finally realizing that disparity is reached at that critical point.
And Laura, yours is the last word on today's World Have Your Say. To everyone here at WGCU, to all of you listening around the world, as ever, we very much appreciate your contributions. You can carry on the discussion on facebook.com/World Have Your Say. But from me and from all of the World Have Your Say team, thank you very much for listening, and thanks to everyone at WGCU for having us. It's been a pleasure coming back. Goodbye.